Pull up a chair and buckle up. It's the Original Strength BodCast. Hey guys, today on the BodCast, I am talking with Carol Ann Agneessens. Carol is a somatic educator in the areas of embryology, cranial sacral therapy, and spatial somatics. Today, Carol and I are discussing yielding, liquid light, the figure eight, and embryology. This is a very neat conversation that I think you're going to enjoy.
You know what I really enjoyed in some of your videos? How you were bringing in rotational movement. It was so not just linear and pumping. It was this movement that was so beautiful. And I've actually sent some of your videos to clients to say, do this before I see you again.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. So good work. It's a lot that you have up there, a lot of in-depth information and movement possibilities that are beyond what is usually recognized. So
that's awesome. And it's, the rotational stuff, well, that's the stuff that feels the best, right? Like I don't know, there's something about it. It feels good.
it feels good. And that's actually that rotational element is throughout our body. It's like we're always moving and rotating and finding that kind of inner spiraling core, because it is a spiral that's moving us. It can be a lengthened spiral that looks like a line, but it's never just this rigid line.
So we have already started the podcast then.
I know.
So before we get deeper into that, Carol, can you give us just a little bit of your background and what you're really into?
Sure. So 1975, 76, I was in a number of car accidents, and my high school teacher who had left the convent wrote me about this intense process she was in called rolfing. And it was basically the only thing that was out there that addressed, there was chiropractic, but that didn't pull me. And it wasn't until I trained in special education, loved teaching kids who were special because they all had a gift. And this was learning disabilities. It was called then, through the emotional spectrum, through also the mentally challenged. And I moved to Seattle at one point, and someone told me they were getting rolfed. I'd been looking for it because I felt like it would help me. And once I had this series of sessions, and basically they were from people who had just been taught by Dr. Rolf herself, it really pushed me. It not even pushed me, it led me to studying at the Rolf Institute in 1981, which at the time was a mystery school. They held the mystery of the body because it's not just anatomy. As you know, there are so many dimensions to the body. So, when you had written in one of the initial exchanges we had, like, how did you get to where you are now? I would say curiosity. And that curiosity is truly because it ignites the passion in the heart. So with that curiosity, I was like, wow, I have to go study this now, because the children and teenagers I was working with when I lived in Seattle were, if they had emotion, you can't separate the emotional trauma from learning problems, from cognitive disabilities. They're all part of the same gestalt. And I went to learn from them, because of them, but also because of my injuries. And that took me on a beautiful study. And I'm so grateful to one of my early teachers, Emmett Hutchins, because he introduced the understanding of a shape called the lemniscate, which is the lazy figure eight. And he taught us how to find this in the tissues. He called it the two-way operator. And so it wasn't just about a linear push through fascia. It was about sensing out how this arrangement in the tissue was forming the tissue. So, time goes on. I did end up teaching rolfing and rolf movement for a number of years. But in 2019, I really was going on a different path. And part of that was because of my study of embryology and my study of cranial sacral therapy. Because of the fluid nature of the cranial sacral system, which addresses the entire body, not just the cranium or the sacrum. It's the whole body. And in 1982, I did a private mentoring with one of Upledger's teachers, but the protocol, putting a protocol on the cranium, didn't work for my hands. It wasn't until I met Tom Shaver, who was an osteopath, who was teaching a lot of people at the time, that I began to understand the fluidic nature of the cranial system and the liquid light. So I was enthralled, and that really began a 25 years, and it's still going on, study of the cranium, but also engaging the embryology and the foundational shapes that form our body. And that's what I'm still studying and working with my own body. So the lemniscate, the spirals, the rotational movements, and how fluid flows in the body in a spiraling way. It's not, even if it's in a capillary or a vessel, it's still spiraling. So all of that informed my curiosity.
That is awesome. So I have a lot of questions from that.
Okay.
So I've heard, okay, so you mentioned embryology.
Yeah.
And that word has come up quite a few times in a few of my conversations. So is embryology is not just about a baby being developed. Does it extend past development? Like, what is embryology?
Well, as one of the osteopaths that I've listened to, but because I wasn't an osteopath, I was not able to train with him, Dr. James Jellis, who also passed away last year. He says we're embryos through our lifetime. We're always developing. Now, this one's going to blow your socks, because Andrew Taylor Still, who was the founder of osteopathy, says that the body is the second placenta. So we are literally, we are more than our body. And what I love about Andrew Taylor Still, and as I was moving through my studies, studying the origins of osteopathy touched me immensely, because Still, who began this, he was a physician in the Civil War, realized that the medicine he knew couldn't heal his family from spinal meningitis. Many of his family members died. So he started working hands-on. He was a magnetic healer. But he realized that bringing the body back in, igniting or allowing literally the vital forces of life to move through you is the health of the body. So this vitality, it's beyond just fixing a shoulder. It's like, how do you begin to bring that energy of life, the vitality, which is the same vital force we see in the trees, the spiraling of a tree, the movement of the wave, the flight of the bird, and how the wings mirror our own shoulder girdle. All of these is this life vitality moving through. And he was concerned about that. How do we reignite that in someone's system? And the thing that Dr. Jellis really gave me was that the forces that shape us are the forces that sustain us. So your rotational things, your spiraling movements, these are expressions of these forces that shape the embryo, that shape nature, and that are part of what keeps us in good health.
That's awesome. You had sent me an article, and I think you had a quote in it that embryology in an adult is healing.
Well, these forces or these shapes are still with us. So I often, from working, have a lot of discomfort through my clavicles and shoulder, but I use these same lemnis gait light movements when I'm walking, when I am working with my own shoulder joint. You know, how do I keep this spiraling motion moving through my body as I'm doing my walk? And basically, that's my exercise these days, with all the Pilates studios closed and all of that.
So that's interesting. I do a lot of crawling.
Oh, yes, I saw that. That's good.
But my hips, my pelvis, they make it when I crawl, it makes an infinity symbol or a lazy eight.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. And that cross crawl is really part of what is also used in settling nervous system, in engaging both sides of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So that neuroplasticity that you speak about in some of your episodes is really facilitated by those you had one where they were touching knees. Mm-hmm. That's a really important cross crawl motion.
Neurology is very cool.
Yes,
all of this stuff is fascinating to me. So now the energy of life, is that also the same thing you referred to as liquid light?
No, I think it was either Andrew Taylor Still or one of his successors, William Sutherland, who said the cerebral spinal fluid is the highest element known to man, and that it literally in the deep. I keep my Hamlet skull right here, but deep within the skull are these ventricles that literally have photon-like cells that infuse the cerebral spinal fluid to begin to move through our cranium, but also through the spinal cord. And so the liquid light is really part of the cerebral spinal fluid.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is really a fascinating thought, because how many people have head injuries, concussions, where there's scarring in the cranium that interferes with that rhythmic flow of cerebral spinal fluid through the system. And that also comes out through some of the nervous system, through some of the little portals.
All right, so I got to learn about the craniosacral system. I'm pretty sure I need like 3 or 4.
Study.
I think 3 or 4 interviews with you.
It would be a pleasure.
Um, so you use a word that I've just recently began to start hearing called yielding.
Oh, yielding, right. But when you have one of your, probably more, but I saw it on one of your videos where you're talking about engaging the backspace. Okay. I don't know. The backside, awareness of building a backside. That's one of your videos. And I was like, hurrah, because with everything so forward focused, I mean, I keep pulling myself back as I'm speaking with you so that I'm seeing through my eyes rather than right on top of you on the screen. And yield actually is what I find is people don't live back here. They often don't even feel their back.
Hmm.
So not only can you yield into your body, into the backspace of the body by contacting a sense of weightedness through your bones, we also yield into the field. And the field is around us because embryologically, we don't grow from inside out. We're being informed by the field itself. And there's different structures, which I don't need to go into right now, but that literally are these bubbles of intelligence from a chorion that's building our blood vessels and our heart from outside in, rather than just the genetics determining inside out. So yield is coming into relationship. It's not passive. It is not you're not surrendering to the backspace. Yield, when you see a yield sign in when you're driving, you don't go to sleep and relax. You literally come more into relationship with what's going on beside you, what traffic is entering. So yield is an awareness of coming into relationship with the field around me. You might call it the kinesphere or your personal space. But yield is coming into relationship. That how many people do you work with, Tim, who can't release the weight of their arms?
Well,
So
a lot.
how do you get a lot? They're carrying their arms in their neck. So how do you get them to yield into the weightedness, the weight on the underside of their arm, so that they can begin to yield the support of their shoulder girdle to their pelvis and the support coming up from their legs. So yield is a coming into relationship actively. Does that clarify some of the?
It does to me, because I was trying to think if it was like when somebody asked me what is strength, and I'm like, well, there's no one, like strength is not just one thing. It's not just physical.
Right,
It's
right,
so many different things. It can be emotional, it can be spiritual, it can be just presence, it can be it's so many things, right? So but it's it's very rarely limited to something. I mean, you could, if you limit it to something quantitative, like a lift, that's so narrow. um and it's so much more than that. And so when I was trying to understand yield, it was kind of like the same thing to me. It's not just yielding to gravity or relaxing to gravity. It's bigger and more than that.
because we can, and that's where embryology plays in. That's where personal awareness, am I just living inside the skin body? Or do I have that awareness of what is around me? And how do I literally also live in the space of my own kinesphere? my own peripersonal space. And right now, and for the past 3 years, we've been pretty much pulled in because of COVID. So how do I also begin to open up to the space around me without the fear of contacting these different viruses that are going around and variants and all of that?
So how
So
do you do that?
well, there's a whole understanding, and this comes out of Stephen Porges, who was really around the brilliant researcher, a scientist who brought forward this understanding of the social nervous system and the vagus nerve. So he also writes about something called neuroception. Neuroception is the ability, and children, infants show this, the ability to tell whether a situation is safe or not. Am I safe?
Mm-hmm.
So being able to work with the vagus system, both the social nervous system, which is a whole other topic, but the dorsal vagus, which I find is very interesting, because in long-term COVID, what is happening is there's damage to this dorsal vagus, which is one of the longest running nerves in the body, from brainstem around the lungs and heart into the belly. It infiltrates all of the organs. So when that is offline, you're going to have digestive problems. You'll have, and it's not myelinated, so it's a slower moving transmission of information. So it's interesting. So with neuroception, this yielding in, because I can sense the field. You sense it when you go shopping or wherever in North Carolina. You know what's going on around you. And there are situations you go, I'm getting out of here now. Something doesn't feel right. Okay. So this yield, this neuroception, the capacity to tell safety, is important when you're in your gym with your clients. Is there, I just had it at my office. They were doing construction work outside my window. And it was like, oh, this doesn't work for me. This noise, this drill, this sawing sounds like a dental office. This is not safe. So you have to come back next week. So that's neuroception, the ability and how you settle that tendency to of fear, of anticipation, is by settling and yielding into backspace, getting that whole sympathetic chain that's coming down. Oh, can you feel your back? Can you feel the table meeting you and supporting you? Or am I always on alert? So neuroception, how do you settle something, a space that does not feel safe? Whether you're working with your adult clients or with kids, how does the situation begin to have a sense of safety in it?
So I think I do know exactly what you're talking about. When COVID first started and everybody was wearing masks in town, when I went, I remember distinctly going into the grocery store one day and just being in it. It felt so dark or sad, and it was just, I didn't feel good at all.
No, and did you do all the shopping you did want to do?
Not really, because I kept contemplating why it felt the way it felt. and like it, and when you're looking at people's faces and the like heads were down, eyes were not joyful, like it was just it was like an apprehension in the air.
Yes, exactly. So neuroception, there's um, certain what would you call them, areas in the brain that register that underneath your conscious awareness, but you felt it. And I'm curious, the other piece of why this dorsal vagus nerve is so important is because it feeds through the entire abdominal system, and your belly brain is affected. So for me, I've been truly, it's a meditation of breathing into my belly. What am I sensing from there? Because this belly brain and all the research now coming out about microbiome and the importance of what you put in your mouth is going to affect how you feel. Food is medicine. How does that, what sensations can I begin to listen to in my gut, in my belly? So because I imagine it wasn't just your thinking brain that was sensing this, it was your body, your belly, your heart. That's what I imagine. That how you felt that discomfort in the grocery store was more than thinking, but was rising up from your body.
You know what rose up?
Yeah.
I started humming. Like I distinctly remember that I was walking through the grocery store humming, and I'm pretty sure I was trying to self-soothe myself with the humming.
Yes. Well, that's definitely one of those self-soothing techniques that helps to down-regulate the vagus alarm system, the neuroception alarm system. That's really great. God, it would have been great if you got the whole grocery store to hum.
I don't think I
Let's
was successful that day.
That's great. That that was that was beautiful. A beautiful way to intervene in your discomfort.
Yeah, and I realized when I was like walking through the store, I'm like, I'm humming. I just something's off, you know. And I was like, but humming made me feel better.
Wonderful. Yeah.
So how can a person, I want to say use yielding, but like to use yielding, you have to have awareness, right? You've got to be
Yeah.
aware of everything, your surroundings or your body or what's going on.
What's going on? And for me, it's like not just yielding into gravity, although that's important. Can I feel my feet? Can I feel down? But also we know there's another side, and that's the up of gravity. But it's like becoming aware of awareness. What am I aware of? Oh, this 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 room, this situation doesn't feel good to me. And where do I sense this from? And that's yielding into your field. And that's what Hiroyoshi Tahata is going to be speaking about and working with. He has a phenomenal horror that he will speak to, but he senses from there. It's quite profound.
Is that what he calls Ma? M-A? Ma?
Well, Ma is even bigger than that. That's that. And he can speak so much more to that because he lives it. But that surrounding how is, when I've taught in Tokyo and also Kyoto, but in Tokyo, because the population is there's so many people there. There's so many people. At the same time, there's this incredible influx of people on subways, down streets, rivers, I would call them rivers of people. I never felt, no one ever ran into me. No, I never felt overcrowded because there's something that is cultivated in their culture that seems to have a depth within their own being that, you know how I'm gonna speak badly about Texans. But you know how Texans can take up the space, like
Well, everything's
I'm
bigger there.
here and everybody, you know, and I lived in Houston, so I think I can speak to it. But that tendency that Americans have to take up space, which isn't the peripersonal space. In Japan, it seems like the inner space is what's important, and also being aware of what is around you. So I was traveling to Tokyo since 2001, and I learned so much. You know, every culture has their gifts and their other sides, but their gift was this beautiful sense of the internal space and pulling themselves in relationship to other. And I saw that with wearing masks. This was pre-COVID. Students would come in with a mask on because they had a cold and they didn't want to infect anyone else.
Wow.
It
So
had nothing to do with freedom.
right. It was out of love and respect. No, that's that, which is beautiful.
It's just this deep concern for other, not even like a love thing. It's just oh, you are another human being and your health is also important to me.
I still think that falls under the definition of love, but
You're right.
so if
I won't disagree.
with everything going on in the world, though, I imagine, well, no, everybody's nervous system is always asking, am I safe? Am I safe? And with everything
Right.
going on in the world, more than likely,
Everything.
the nervous system is saying, nope, not safe. I'm not safe at all.
Okay. Yeah.
So what is your advice for that person, like that,
This world we're living in now?
or how to change that alarm signal, not
How
safe,
to
to how to get
maybe
started?
dampen it.
Yeah.
Turn it down.
How do you get started so that you can feel safe in your space, or your world, so to speak?
Well, first I have to feel safe inside myself.
Mhm.
You know, I have to feel like, oh, you know, sometimes it's a matter of what is my heart doing? Is my heart racing? Oh, let me put my hand on my heart. You know, is it beating fast? Is it just, if I find it beating fast, what am I responding to? So it's a real deep awareness of what's going on. Plus, not just going to my brain or thinking mind. It's like feeling my body. Okay, what's heartbeat? Can I feel my feet on the floor, on the ground? Do I feel that connection? What's happening with my breath? You have a beautiful title, Wrapping the Exercise in Your Breath. That's, you know, am I breathing? Am I breathing a longer exhalation than an inhalation? You know, from the time we were little kids and the doc put a tongue, take a breath now, and you're struggling to take a breath with this thing in your mouth. If your exhalation can be longer than your inhalation, that's actually the important part of the cycle. And that comes from a man, Dr. Carl Stow, who was, yes, Dr. Breath. And he, you know, worked with emphysema patients of World War II. My grandfather was from World War I, had emphysema. And, you know, I saw in his DVD working with, plus he had ears that I can only imagine what he heard when he would tap on the lungs of a emphysema patient. You know, and where wasn't it breathing? but he always emphasized the exhale as and that actually is the important part of self-soothing. And I let my breath out so that I can take a full breath in. So those are, the self-soothe, the exhalation, the heartbeat, feeling feet.
And that does work.
It
Like
works.
just 2 days ago, I read an email that I did not like. And like to me, it was like, oh gosh, why is this happening kind of email? And I could feel my skin pulsating. Like my heart rate was just, and then I was like, whoa, like, cause the systemic response in my body was like, I didn't like it. I was like, this is silly. This is just an email. Why are you? And so, and I could feel like it was racing. So I crossed my hands and crossed my feet and I laid on the floor and I just like slowed my exhalation down, like maybe 2 or 3 exhalations a minute to try to get everything to calm back down. And within a minute, all the pulsating stopped, the alarm stopped going off. And then I was actually able to solve problems. like it wasn't that big of a deal. It was just my reaction to it. That was the deal.
Yeah. But see, you could do a whole thing just on that, Tim. Because everyone's autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic response is on high alert these days. And knowing how to self-regulate is really a huge, huge contribution to people who are willing to be aware of their own body physiology.
Sometimes it pays to be aware.
And sometimes it's a double-edged sword.
Sometimes it's a double-edged sword. You're absolutely right.
Oh, yeah. The more I feel, the more I feel.
Absolutely. Carol, this has been so much fun. If people want to learn from you and learn more about you, where can they go? What can they do?
Just have them go to because I have been away from my website for a year and a half or more now. So just have them go to my email address, Carol Anneessens @mac.com. That's perfect because then I can disseminate different information and feed them back to you too. Because what you're doing. It's great.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you for your time.
I enjoyed talking with you too. I think what you're doing and where you're going with this is really beautiful. So
Awesome.
Keep it up.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Now get outside and play.